Hello everybody, welcome back to our Regcast, and today we're talking about VDI for real. Now, as you know, we've done a long series of these and we've been talking about different aspects of virtualization. Last time we brought you the guy from Chester Zoo. Well, this time we've called the cops. Yeah, they're a bit nervous in the studio here because they're worried they might have to turn out their pockets later. Don't worry guys, the first offence is just a caution. As long as it's a first offence. OK, now, today we're going to be talking about the virtual desktops, moving that on. And the reason why we've got the guys in is to talk about what it's like in real life. We, as usual, we're not bringing you just the stuff that the vendors say, although one's sneaked in. We're going to be talking about what it's like in real life to get the project going. So we hope that you've got a lot of questions. You had a lot for the guy from Chester Zoo, so we hope you got a lot of questions again about this, because it's pretty interesting stuff. Now, let me introduce who we've got with us today. So, first of all, from Lancashire Constabulary, Michael Wood. Michael, hello. Welcome.
Morning.
Right. And also Colin Fitzsimons.
Yeah, morning.
Okay. And so from Microsoft, you'll recognise him now. Neil, hello. Hello again. And from our old mates, Freeform Dynamics, Tony Locke.
Good morning, Tim.
That's Tony. He's had a caution or two in his time. You wouldn't think it now, but it's actually true. Now, let me tell you how we use the interface. For those of you who haven't been to one of these Regcasts before, if you look above my head here, you can see the button which allows you to ask questions. Please do that. Don't complain afterwards that we didn't talk about the things that you wanted us to talk about if you haven't asked a question. Here, you can take responsibility for this sort of thing. You get the bios of the speakers today. You can also download the PDF of the presentation that we've got. If you want to watch it in a different window, save it for afterwards, take it home to your kids so they can see what you do at work. And also, afterwards, give us your feedback about what we're doing, because we want to do more of the stuff that you like, rather than just, shove stuff down your throat that you don't really want to hear about. Right, so first of all, Tony, I've really got to ask you why we're talking about VDI and what's different talking about it now, because these sort of thin client type of ideas, they've been around forever, haven't they?
Yeah, well, it's not really so much about thin client, it's more about managing desktops. Mm-hmm. And ever since PCs crept into the business, and that again was no pun intended, I do apologise for that. Since personal computers came into the business, there's been a problem associated with them that most people are very possessive of them. It's got that personal word in there. And so for any IT department to actually exert any degree of management of the machines to keep them running, make sure they've got everything on that people need, make sure they don't have things on there that the company would rather they didn't, has been a challenge. Some of it's been internal politics, some of it's just been purely cultural. Until probably very recently, there's been a degree of management tooling and the lack of good management tooling to make it happen. And obviously, over the last 2 or 3 years, there's this thing come along called desktop virtualization. So the question is this something that can help us actually manage these desktops? Because most businesses tell us when we go out and ask the audience, it's costing them a lot of money. Not quite sure how much, but we know we're spending an awful lot of time doing this. Is there a way we can make it better, a way that we can make sure that people have got the services they need without so much downtime and fewer problems, as well as reducing the cost and obviously reducing the risk to the business, because there might potentially be a lot of sensitive information on there.
I also have the economic conditions the last couple of years that made people look again at the amount of money that they're spending day by day.
I think, yeah, we've had a lot of pressure on IT over the course of the last decade almost, since the last depression back in 2000, 2001, for IT to justify its expense. And we've been through all of the easy suspects first, so the big computer centre rooms, consolidating data centres, looking at server consolidation, as we did in the last webinar. And now there are a couple of areas left where there's a lot of money being spent. What can we do about it? And one of them is desktop and desktop support. And we do know, whenever we ask the register audience, about support of desktops in particular, we get an awful lot of feedback.
Yeah, no one actually feeds back and says it's a pleasure. I really love doing it.
Everybody says it's a wonderful thing to do, and they have so much fun interacting with their end users. And so the question now is desktop virtualization something that can help do this? And in particular, we're going to learn from the real guys out there who have been doing it. What about VDI? Where does that fit? How can we take this forward?
Okay, well then let's do that. Let's get on with that and find out what's been going on at Lancashire Constabulary. Now, Colin, you're going to pick this up first, are you? Tell me a bit about the background. Before we got to the VDI project at Lancashire Constabulary, what were you doing? How were you handling your desktops?
Well, we've got about 4,000 desktops at the moment, and there's another 400 mobile data terminals in the force, and they're spread throughout the constabulary. Obviously, we cover the whole of Lancashire, so our desktops are spread. We've got 6 divisions, we've got the headquarters. We've had Microsoft SMS for a long time. We were in the SMS 1.1 or 1.2. Yeah, went to 2003, and we're now in SCCM. So we historically used a lot of Microsoft tools, SCCM, SCOM, to try and help us manage desktops. I think one of the biggest challenges that we had was that the divisions, as I said, we get 6 divisions, had devolved financial management. So it meant that out in the divisions, a divisional commander could decide that they wanted some piece of software. So we ended up with software on PCs out in divisions that we in IT didn't actually know was there. And it's, some of it's our own fault, because we obviously weren't using SMS and then SCCM as it became, as well as we should have been doing. But there were also the political problems with the devolvement.
Well, the trend over the history has been very much letting people do things their way, isn't it? And the problem comes, you pick up the mess when someone phones up and says it's not working. You say, I didn't know it existed.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other things with the devolved financial management that we had, the divisions have their own, we used to call them ITLOs, IT liaison officers. They were doing the desktop support for us. I think the new term for them is client support officers.
It's more, it's a nicer term than ITLO.
Yeah, absolutely. So each division's got their own client support officer, so they're out there doing day-to-day stuff with the users, trying to fix their desktop problems. So a lot of the time we, in the centre, in the ICT department, actually, we just don't know what's going on with the desktops. We've basically lost control of the desktop.
Now, and also tell me, what are the important applications, the sorts of things you're running, and what are the things that really can't go wrong?
The major things to us are a command and control system, because obviously we're 999, 24/7 police service. So we've got a command and control system. We've got our intel system that's the other kind of major operational systems, the custody system. As to be said, most of our operational systems are actually web-based, so there's not really any client installed on the desktop itself. And then we've obviously got the usual Microsoft apps, the usual Office apps, Word, Excel, Outlook, because we are a big Microsoft customer, so...
And also, I imagine you have quite a requirement for confidentiality, security, this sort of thing.
Well, that's how the whole project actually came about. So,
yeah. Okay.
One thing just first to point out, the fact that you didn't know what apps are out there is by no means something unique to your own force. That's a very, very common issue in businesses all across the place. Whenever we've surveyed people and when I've been out there talking to real customers from my real IT days, we go out and ask, well, how many PCs have you got? And everybody thinks they've got an answer, but usually when they actually go out and count them, the numbers are significantly higher, and the lack of knowledge about what's actually running on them is very, very common across the entire IT world.
I think the total number of PCs was an issue for us a couple of years back, because at one point the divisions were actually buying their own PCs.
Yep.
And then the ITLOs was, because we'd given the ITLOs permissions to put them into AD and put them on the network, the ITLOs are shoving them on the network. We don't even know the PC's been put in. So at one point we didn't actually have a clear idea of the number of PCs that we actually had. We managed to rein that in about a couple of years back. So any new PCs that were purchased with obviously the budget, but they were purchased centrally through our department. So we got a bit more control, maybe about 2 years back, over the actual number of PCs that we had, but we still had the problem with what applications we've actually got out there.
So you started getting some real management process in place first, almost before you looked at anything whatsoever to do with the technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's crucial.
So what was the turning point on this then? When did you start thinking about VDI properly?
Or when did you start thinking about desktop virtualization or desktop management, just to really get to the true starting point? Was VDI the first option, or did you look at other things?
Oh, no, we looked at other things first, yeah. what's important to bear in mind here is that we did this for a security project. All the police forces in the UK have got to comply with the ACPO Community Security Policy by March this year. So that's all 43 English and Wales forces, and there's a policy for the 8 Scottish forces as well. So yeah, we had a requirement to meet CSP compliance. So that's what we were actually looking at. Nothing to do with VDI or desktop replacement.
What does this compliance say that you have to do?
Okay.
I mean briefly.
We've got to comply with a number of things. Government protected marking, yeah. So it's important that we split up our confidential and our restricted applications and our confidential and restricted data. So one of the key things that actually came out, and it was actually about a year after we started looking at CSP compliance, what actually came out from the National Police Improvement Agency. They had a meeting with all the forces, and it was clear that a lot of the applications that police forces have kind of marked as restricted are actually going to have to be mapped confidential because we've got to do it right. So
confidential is more than restricted?
Yeah, confidential. You've got top secret, confidential, restricted. Yeah. So the most of the operational systems that the Air Force and the other forces will be using as well should actually be marked as confidential, not restricted. The problem that all the forces have got, or most of the forces have got, with very few exceptions, that we all run a restricted network and not a confidential network. Yeah. So it was pragmatic for the forces to consider all their systems and all their data in general as being restricted rather than being confidential. Yeah. So when we first started the CSP, we thought that the majority of our stuff was still going to be restricted and the minority was going to be confidential. So, and that's just... So yeah.
It would have been really easy.
Oh, it would have been easy, much easier.
Right, that would have made it a much easier project. This isn't filling me with confidence, guys. Can we have some good news in a minute? So what made... So then you start talking about... So you start thinking about virtualising the desktop. When's that step? What's the turning point on that then? Did you just believe that as things were, you wouldn't be able to achieve what you needed to do?
What was virtualisation, desktop virtualisation, the obvious step to take, or were there others?
No, there were others. We looked at terminal services, or IDS now it is, but because of the applications that we use, the majority of them are built in-house, or developed in-house, and we've found at an early stage that terminal services wasn't going to do the job that we required. We would have had to have a massive terminal service farm to just be able to cope with it. A lot more than we would need for virtual desktops.
Would there have been restrictions on the functionality that could deliver
yes,
as well that wouldn't work? Yeah. Okay. So you looked at a range of things, and then how did you hone down on desktop virtualisation and VDI in particular? Were there particular technology aspects of it, or was it a broader question than that?
Well, we've got a lot of our servers already on virtualised with VMware, and
so you're no strangers to virtualisation.
Virtualisation, and of course they had the product out that we wanted to test, and we did test the virtualisation with that, and that's where sort of like in the first instance we decided to look and find out if virtualisation would have been an ideal scenario to give us the restricted confidential segregation.
So you did some sort of testing there?
Yes.
How much testing was involved? Was it something you could do very quickly, or did it take a lot of effort to even do the testing?
Well, I mean, the testing we did initially for just that was very, very basic. We didn't put a massive farm in, we didn't put massive servers in. We actually used some old servers and used it for our development teams.
So some reuse of kit going on there.
Yes, yeah. Just to check it out, just to see if it would fly, and obviously, you know, where we are. That's why we're here now. Yes.
So, what were the next steps in the process? Was it building a business case, or was it just to go into more in-depth technology selection before you could even build a business case? What came first? Was it a chicken and egg scenario?
No, I think the business case for VDI is particularly difficult. Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to build a business case where you're seeing any short-term returns. It's just not feasible. In fact, we've been asked by other forces, can you help us do a business case for VDI? And my response has been no.
Quite right too. Do their own business case. What have they ever done for you? No, it's serious. Why is it difficult to build that case?
Because the upfront costs are quite high. Yeah. If you're going to look at any savings, it's got to be over the longer term. Yeah. So
longer term is what?
5 years. Yeah, maybe more.
Yeah, that's a difficult business case to put forward.
Absolutely,
isn't it?
yeah.
And it's very much in line with the feedback that we've had from register readers when we've surveyed them over the course of the last year, 2 years, when we've asked them, what are the challenges you've got? And apart from actually understanding the differences in the technology aspects of desktop virtualization, what fits where, the real big inhibitor was making that business case. So.
And I think that's particularly true for VDI because it's quite a new way of delivering a desktop service. And there's not a lot of experience of building those sorts of business cases. And it tends to be quite specific types of users that you can build.
So that's the trick you're finding, is it, Neil, for people that are using it, is they've got a real, so like a regulatory requirement?
I think for a lot of these things, it's best if it's tied to a real business driver, so something that the organisation needs to do, and then as has happened, look at what the different options are for delivering the right desktop service, and look at presentation, look at application, the other types of virtualisation, see where virtualisation fits into the bigger picture.
Does this mean, guys, that if you hadn't have had your regulations coming in, you probably wouldn't have got this project through?
Yeah, absolutely. We wouldn't. We'd have liked to have done it. I think there's like everyone out there. It's. I think a lot of people would like to give VDI a go. Yeah, but it's actually getting that business case through is particularly hard. I think you really need that specific reason. Something specific that you can get hold of that's the reason that you're doing it. You're not just doing it because you think you're going to save some money, because in reality, when you look at it, you are looking longer term, because it is big upfront costs.
Virtualise is an easy business case.
Yeah.
But
this is what's striking me. It's a very different conversation. We've had, we've had a few sessions like this on server virtualization. Always the easy thing to talk about is straight away you're getting into savings of resources and the money comes very quickly. This opposite.
So you didn't have the option of doing nothing. You had to do something, and did you then look at alternatives and find out, well, frankly, that desktop virtualization was the least expensive option, even if making that business case was tricky?
Yeah, I mean, when we did this security project, one of the things that obviously your kind of first thoughts, why don't we just make the whole network confidential? Well, I happen to know that one of the other forces quoted £12 million for making the network confidential. Now, that's way beyond what we are looking at spending. So the costs for going confidential are particular.
Would that have also restricted users' ability to actually do their daily work?
It does, yeah.
We would find it extremely difficult to share that information to not just other police forces, but third parties.
Yeah. Partner agencies, for instance, because as a police force we get requirements to share information with other agencies.
Well, things like child protection and things like that.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's not just the other police forces, but if we'd made the whole network confidential, it wouldn't also. It would have stopped us from sharing certain stuff with other agencies. It would also have stopped us sharing with other police forces that hadn't put their entire network to confidential. So there's a fine balancing line to actually draw there.
So pragmatism rules then.
Okay.
Yeah, basically.
So we need to get on to what you actually did. So you're saying that you managed to make this business case for a trial, for a test.
Yeah. Well, we'd been looking at terminal services, as we said, and up until the point where we realised that the majority of the systems, the majority of the operational systems, were going to be confidential rather than restricted. Terminal services to us looked like the better option. As soon as that case kind of turned around and it looked at the majority of our operational systems should properly be classified as confidential and terminal services didn't fit, then it was, well, what else can we do in return? So we had to look at the options. We're not a big Citrix user. We've got some Citrix. So I think if we'd been a big Citrix user, some of the other forces are, Citrix might have been a bit higher up our kind of list of priorities. I still don't think it would have topped to VDI, and obviously Citrix can provide solutions for VDI. So we looked at the options, and there really wasn't a clear winner other than VDI. There was nothing that could actually give us what we required.
How easy was it for you to find out what solutions were available, particularly on the desktop virtualization side, and what of them fitted and why VDI was the better choice? Because again, we've had lots of feedback from the audience saying that understanding the solutions and what fits where to make exactly this sort of judgment is not easy unless you've got either some people who've done it already, and obviously there are very few of those, yourselves apart, or some other way of actually getting hold of that information, because there's no one place you can go and look. How did you tackle that one?
There was a lot of talking to vendors, a lot of research, a lot of trolling the web, seeing what was available, ringing people up, talking to other forces, talking to other organisations. What have you looked at? We got a very good, at the beginning of the CSP project, we got a very good partner in, a Microsoft partner as it happens, but we've worked with them before, Visual Computing, Visual Consulting, and they were very helpful to us. I think it's very important that you find yourself a partner that you can actually work with and that you can trust. Somebody that's not just going to say, yeah.
We'll learn on the job while we're doing it with you.
Yeah, well, the thing about... yeah, there are. Well, the good thing about Visual as well is they actually said no when I said, let's do VDI. So it was a case of, let's do VDI, and it was, whoa, no. Well, what's the alternative? And to be honest, there was nothing that we could find that actually...
Did they make suggestions of alternatives? Or was it simply a case of there must be something else?
It was a case of, there must be something else, but we couldn't actually find anything else that would actually give us what we actually required.
It's got a healthy attitude, because I think one of the things we're seeing is in some areas there's an assumption that VDI is the answer.
Yep.
And actually it is a good answer for certain types of things and for certain types of solutions. But I think having that attitude that is, right, what is it you're trying to achieve, what are the different options, and working through that in a logical way is much more effective and ends up with the right decision.
Was there one key trigger that says, yeah, VDI has got this, and that's really the thing that tips it absolutely in favour of VDI rather than anything else that might be made to fit?
It is the total segregation of your desktop.
Right.
Yeah. The fact that we can give the users a desktop in confidential, and that is their desktop in confidential, and it never crosses the boundary into restricted. So when they're working in confidential,
that's it.
They've got that. They only need one PC in front of them. Some other agencies have got, people have got multiple two computers.
PCs.
Yeah. So they have one screen and they have to toggle between their different PCs. And we didn't think that was a really acceptable option for the users.
We thought about doing
Considered
that.
that.
We considered it.
Yeah,
but that would have given us even more headaches.
Yeah.
Doubled your management workload for at least.
So the fact that with VDI they could have one desktop, and we've not actually put out much thin client. We had actually planned to put out thin client this in past year, but
somebody spent the budget.
Yeah, somebody spent the budget.
This is not a time for your internal arguments. Guys, I do need to move you on. This is interesting. I do need to move you on to how you got the test going, how you started to roll this out and trial it, and what you found out from that.
Okay, right. Well, I don't want to take too much time, but there's a big history behind how we actually got there. Yeah, because we're obviously looking at VDI. We talked to a couple of the big suppliers. So a couple of them, Sun and HP, have provided solutions to government that can get CESG approval. Yeah, so they had some off-the-shelf VDI solutions that they were prepared to sell us.
So an obvious first stop to go and talk.
Yeah. So we were actually in quite big consultations, particularly with HP, because their solution seemed to fit us a bit better than Sun's actually did, but that was just our particular...
That's your scenario.
And we actually got quite far down the line with HP, and then realised that there'd been some assumptions they'd made that meant that the budget that we'd been talking to them and I'd actually got approved.
Yep.
We'd actually gone to the point where I'd gone and got budget approved from the police authority, and all of a sudden they realised that the costs were actually double what we'd been talking about.
Right. So that does take it out.
So
of the
at that
range,
point,
yes.
we had to back off from HP, which was a shame because the solution was, there.
You spent a lot of time working it out, so just had to do something else.
So at that point, we had to then say, we're going to have to do this on our own with the help of a partner, which was Visual. So then we had to figure out how we actually did it on our own.
Was that a long project to actually get that planning in place, or could you do it? Was it just a couple of nights' work?
No,
over the weekend when you had nothing else to do.
If only.
Tell me, to save that half a budget that you had to save, where do you cut back?
Where do we cut back? We've cut back on the cost of HP's software, because they have a particular software solution, so that gets chopped out totally. Okay. We had to reconsider our storage costs and look at what the options for the storage, and storage is one of the key considerations for VDI.
Sure.
We had to look at our hypervisor provider, and we'd looked at VMware.
And don't forget the connection broker.
And when we were talking to HP have got their own connection broker, and that's what we've been considering with them. HP's connection broker is simply a connection broker. It doesn't provide a lot of other extra management features that some of the VMware View or whatever actually provides. So when we've been talking to HP, we'd asked them whether they could do it with VMware View, because we're a big VMware user. We get 70%, at least 70% of infrastructure, server infrastructure is actually virtualised.
Which is higher than most organisations.
Yeah, I think so. So we'd gone to these discussions with HP, so they'd looked at View, so we'd a really close look at View, and we were teetering around the edge of View and whether it actually, with HP, with the facilities HP provided, it could meet the security requirements.
It's role-based access, which is the main thing.
When we backed off from HP, we actually had to look at the connection broker, and the problem with VMware's offering, certainly at that time, was it couldn't provide the security requirements that we were actually looking for.
Okay, so then you had to go and look elsewhere.
So we had to look elsewhere, and we've actually gone with Quest's vWorkspace. It used to be Provision Networks.
Yep.
They've got a connection broker that can provide all the surrounding security aspects on most of the stuff that we were going to get from HP, and can meet our security requirements. So at this point, as far as the actual hypervisor was concerned, we'd ruled Microsoft out. Because like a lot of people, when Microsoft brought out Hyper-V, we had a look at it. We got all the usual hype from Microsoft. Hyper-V is brilliant. And
so the first version.
And the first thing that we'd said to Microsoft, obviously, was, what about vMotion? So Microsoft did the usual, well, you don't need vMotion, do you? I'm sorry, Mr. Gates. We actually need vMotion. So we had a look at Hyper-V in its original form. And we've actually got some Hyper-V version 1, if we want to call it that, in a certain department.
Not
anymore.
Okay.
We did have.
And
to be honest, we weren't that happy with it, and we did provide vMotion, which was fundamental to us. So we actually ruled Microsoft out. We knew that 2008 R2 was coming along, but we kind of ruled out as being too risky, because this was earlier on last year, and it was still a bit off.
So still in the early phases, so you don't want to be first on your own.
So we'd ruled Microsoft out. Microsoft came along, and our account manager actually said, well, if I arrange for you to talk to the guys in Reading, maybe we can convince you to go with Microsoft. Will you have a chat? Yeah, we'll have a chat with them. So we had a chat with the guys in Reading, and we ended the phone call going, what was that about? Because it seemed to us at that point that Microsoft were trying to talk us out of doing VDI. That was the definite impression that we had.
Were you involved on this?
But I think there is a reality. I think there is a sense sometimes that what Microsoft says is we're very keen to say there are multiple different solutions for desktop virtualization, and look at the different options. And sometimes I think that does come across as Microsoft says, don't use VDI, which isn't what Microsoft is trying to say.
Saying make the right choice rather than just do something for the sake of doing something.
So it's a more complicated message from Microsoft of here are a series of different options and this is where we think they tend to fit. And choose the right solution for what you're trying to do.
And that's exactly what the register audience tells us is a problem, that the clarity of what fits where is not out there. Yeah. So it's not just Microsoft, it's everybody else involved in the space as well.
Yeah. I think that's true. I think as we get more experience of using different types of desktop virtualization in real-world cases like this, then I think as an industry we'll get more experience in knowing what works best where. And we'll have more of that real-world experience to draw on and have a more sensible...
So you followed up with some more conversations with Microsoft?
Well,
because there was coffee involved and then...
No, well, actually, we were going with VMware View and Quest Connection Broker. Okay. Yeah, because even though we were going to buy View, because it was the best way to license VDI from VMware, to take the View Connection Broker, even though we were going to use Quest Connection Broker. Yeah, so we're buying... Yeah, it works out cheaper to buy the
licensing is complex at the best of times, never mind in virtualized environments.
Absolutely, so we're trying to have these conversations with VMware, because we're obviously a big VMware user, and VMware, we've still got a lot of VMware, obviously, for our server virtualization. But we had difficulty in actually getting the pricing sorted out with VMware. I don't mean to criticise VMware because they're not here to defend themselves, and we are still a VMware customer.
Sure.
But it was extremely difficult getting the pricing sorted out with them, and it was expensive. So at some point in the conversation, we got to the stage where it's VMware's year-end or half-year-end, and we're looking to get a deal, and it just never happened. And then Microsoft came along, and I think it was our technical account manager said, if we can get you on the early adopter program for 2008 R2, well, you have a look at what's coming from Microsoft for your VDI.
To give you that comfort that there will be additional support provided in being up there up front.
And early access.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before release,
so our immediate response was, we will reconsider it, but we're not making any promises. If you get us on the early adopter program, we will have a look at it, but we're not going to promise you anything because we still need to be convinced. Okay. So Microsoft put us on the early adopter program. We went down, we talked to the guys down in Reading, Julius and Clive particularly, and they convinced us. It was like, Microsoft are really committed to this. They mean business here. It looks like they've got the product in 2008 R2. In licensing terms, because we've already got a decent enterprise agreement, we've got a decent premier support agreement, we're a big Microsoft customer, to us it was a very low-cost option.
Yeah. So the incremental costs made sense in your particular scenario.
So from our point of view, there wasn't a risk money-wise in having a go at Hyper-V. The only risk was whether we could actually get it to work okay or not, and then we'd have, if we hadn't, then we'd have to back out, but we wouldn't have spent a lot of money. So
just time. As far as the hardware infrastructure goes, we'd need it either way.
Having been put on the early adopter program, we went with Microsoft, and to be honest, we really like Hyper-V R2. We like the live migration, so much so that after our testing, our original plan was to put in a test environment and then roll it out into live, and then just to roll the live on from there. We were looking at live migration for things like our comms rooms, where they need to be 24/7, and they can't afford the downtime because obviously they're dealing live with the public life and death situations. So we needed live migration for the comms rooms. So we were looking at non-persistent desktops for a majority of the users, where we could just rip down the desktop and bring it up again. Some persistent desktops for people that actually need some persistent, and the live migration for people like the comms rooms and the custody suites. After our testing, we decided that we're going to actually cluster everything and put in live migration. Whether we use it or not for everybody, we thought it was well worth actually having it in.
It's the belts and braces approach, so that if it's there and you can do it, might as well make use of it if we need to.
Well, it comes with the Hyper-V R2 standards.
Yes, you're not paying a extra for it, so you can make use of it when you want to.
Absolutely.
So you put yourself in a position where you're able to now get the costs fitting within your budget, where you've got some suppliers, both your partner and obviously Microsoft involved, so that your elements of trust that you can actually make this work, or at least push it forward far enough to see that it's going to work or not work, without risk to you, certainly on a budgetary side, but just on time, was something that you could live with. Did you then have to go back and remake any business cases, or was it simply that you'd got something in place already that you could repurpose to fit this, or did you have to do anything procedurally internally to go ahead?
Yeah, well, obviously because I'd already got the budget agreed when we were in the discussions with HP, that was then the budget that we had to work within.
So that was fixed, and whatever you spent it on was up to you, and as long as it worked at the end of it, it's down to you.
Yeah, obviously it's a little bit more complicated than that, obviously.
Yep, sure.
But yeah, I mean, the force need a solution, and we've got a project board for CSP. I mean, VDI is only part. It's not even a whole project on its own. It's part of one project in CSP, and the CSP's actually got 18. It just keeps going. There's 18 separate projects, 2 of which I manage. One of them's PKI, and the other one's network segregation. Right. And VDI is part of my network segregation project.
So VDI is kind of like a hobby, something that you do for pleasure.
No,
seriously, they need to know a little bit about the, about that sort of process of introducing it and how you manage that, because also suddenly you've got a lot of people that haven't been involved in that decision, and they're suddenly looking at that and thinking, do we really want to do this? This looks a little bit risky, especially if you're looking at technology that maybe they don't know very much about.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the biggest worry about VDI was the risk. From everyone's point of view, from ours in the ICT department's point of view, from my point of view, from the forces point of view, from Reggio's point of view, from Microsoft's point of view, I thought as well. So VDI for us particularly, it was a big risk going with
it's
VDI.
It's a change.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you handle that internally then?
Was it an educational role? Was it just talking to people?
Or was it just putting it in front of them and saying, look, it's not that bad, really?
Yeah, but they don't like that either. No. It's, we don't like that. We don't like that.
What didn't they like?
They don't like the facts that they can't have whatever application they fancy on their desktop, for a start.
So the traditional problem with anybody trying to manage the desktops.
Yeah, absolutely.
What you said earlier on about it being personal.
It's mine, it's not yours.
Yeah. And it's no longer that.
I mean, one of the first things that we actually had to do was to look and see how many applications, what applications we actually had out there. So we had to get our client support officers to go and trawl their own divisions. And we get separate CSOs at headquarters to work out what we actually had out there. So
before they've been kind of helping people get software onto that, and now they were becoming like policemen, really.
Yeah. And to be honest, from the client support officer's point of view, they were quite resistant at first. It was like, whoa.
They're the ones that are going to get the initial contact flag.
Yeah, absolutely. After a bit, they actually started kind of buying into it. Yeah, so they're actually quite keen.
And you do need that.
Yeah,
you definitely need that the local support office people to get the buy-in.
Was it important to have the management of the people out in the offices also behind it, so that they could tell the staff, look, we've got to do this, and there are good reasons for doing this? Was that an important part of this, or was that something that?
I think this is a message that we're still trying to get over as well, because the problem is this is just one part of this huge CSP project, or the huge CSP Lister project. So we're actually putting the force through a kind of lot of change. Yeah,
in a short period of time.
Yeah, in a very short period of time.
You can't afford to get hung up on this.
Yeah, this is a big problem, you say. So we're doing, from Microsoft's perspective, we're virtualising all the different aspects as far as virtualisation go. Yep. We've got a VDI. We're doing a folder redirection. Now, people don't like having the folders moved centrally. Yeah. We'll back up your folders for you. Yeah, but we like them on our desktop, Yeah, but if your PC crashes, they're gone. There's no backup there.
Yep.
But so that's another. There's quite a bit of resistance to folder redirection.
And that's a very common feedback that we get from everywhere. It's something that IT's basically got itself into because of the very history of PCs and how they got into business in the first place.
In fact, a lot of the kickback from folder redirection is from a lot of the ICT departments.
It's interesting. It's either from the ICT people or it's from the very senior managers. Great for everybody else, but not for us.
And to be honest, there was from some senior managers. I think there was a bit of, they're not really doing this to us, are they? Yeah. They're not doing it to my PC. Kind of thing.
And that's the word, my PC. People do see the PC on their desktop at work as being their PC, and that's a very difficult culture change. But it's a critical change because a lot of the cost. There's quite a high cost in an unmanaged desktop service of any whatever model you use, and so it's a very difficult balance to provide people with the flexibility to do the job they need to do, but at a cost that the organisation can really manage.
Now, I don't want to hurry you through, guys, but we've got to look at some of the operational problems that you got and some of the problems that you have to sort out, because quite apart from anything else, we've got a pile of questions. Thanks very much for that. I hope we're answering some of them as we go through, but we do have some people asking about how you deal with the bottlenecks.
I'll tell you what, this project is months behind schedule. VDI. Sorry guys, everyone out there.
Can we get some different experts?
really sorry, but it is months behind.
This is the real world.
It's life.
It just don't happen as quick as you hope it's going to happen.
Especially when it's something so new that there's not a lot of experience out there doing it anyway.
I mean, the original plan was VDI would be rolled out to the entire force. Everyone would be on VDI before Christmas, December last year. I think we are going to be September before we're actually
really that long. What's holding you up?
It's everything. It's just everything. You name it, it's holding us up.
Even down to making sure each NIC card is named correctly on every single server, so that when you're doing the virtualisation, it can swap between the servers really smoothly. It's everything.
So it's the devil's literally in the detail.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for instance, when we decided that we'd actually enable live migration for everything, we actually went back to Microsoft, to Clive and Julius last month. So we were reconfiguring our kit, because what we put in for test, we ripped it all out. We went, sorry, we're going to have to reconfigure that entire lot. So we came back, we're trying to get it sorted before Christmas. The conversation we make, but obviously it's coming up to Christmas, people are on leave, and it's really hard people to get things organised, it's hard to get hold of people. So we came back in the new year, first week in the new year, we're on to Microsoft down in Redden, talking to Clive and Julius about how we're sorting out the network cards for the VDI, and we're actually shoving more network cards into all our servers. This was at the beginning of January.
So by the sounds of it, given that you've talked about redirection and we had the question about getting the storage right and making sure you've got the appropriate stuff there, then communications is the other big area for you to make sure that you get the detail right.
Absolutely.
Because the storage and communications are areas that most IT generalists have less exposure and less experience in. Is that something that's the same with you, or have you got guys that have got more of those skills so that it was easier for you to actually deal with the problems as they came up?
Well, in our team, our storage people are on the same team as we are, which is handy.
So you've got some dedicated storage guys who know the stuff inside out.
So we've got some people that know the storage. The network team used to be part of our team as well. Go back a couple of years. So we've got some network experience, but we've got a separate network team now because it just grew.
That's the way it happens.
And you do need their buy-in for this as well.
Because it's more common for networks to be quite separate, and that's why these sorts of projects are often quite challenging in other experiences.
To be honest, it was quite hard. The network guys were having to get their heads round the VDI and how we were wanting it set up. So that took quite a bit of working out. What we actually did is we kind of black boxed off the VDI. So what we said was, so there's our core. So we've got our servers, we've got our core network. So we'll black box off the VDI. So we'll put topper rack switches in the server racks for the VDI. Yeah, and then it means that all we're doing is plugging that into the core network switches. Yeah. So we can consider it as a kind of totally separate solution. So because we're not the first thing that happens if we get some sort of problem, people just go, oh,
it's VDI.
Yeah. And we're like, well, so the best way not to have that problem is just to right. So there,
it's a silo
like
in and of itself.
It's siloed off. That's the VDI there. The VDI networking's all there. The VDI storage is all separate storage. That's how we're doing it. If we get problems with storage performance, it's not down to VDI. If we get problems with the network performance, it's not down to the VDI.
Are there any other benefits that come from having everything in that architectural silo there? Does that help with the performance, actually getting the stuff out to users?
It does, especially for live migration, because live migration is one of the bigger network utilisations there is. So to have that network completely segregated and put to one side, we've found that a lot better for us.
Yeah.
You know.
So, yeah, it makes it a lot easier to manage.
Yeah.
So
And that's going to be long term. That's
long term. Yeah. So it's from our perspective, it was a kind of no-brainer. Let's keep it segregated there.
Yep.
And that way we're not getting the blame for anything else that's going wrong.
There's 3 or 4 people asking about what desktop hardware that you're using. So what is the client?
Yeah. You mentioned that you ultimately might be moving to thin client, but what are you using today? The old stuff, or did you get stuff in specially?
No, what we're doing is we're re-imaging all PCs. Yeah. So this year we haven't done any desktop replacement per se. So normally the desktop replacement programs are kind of 5-year programs, so we spend about £500,000 a year on desktop replacement. So this year the desktop replacement budget went to VDI. So we were going to put in a load of thin clients this year, but as Mike said, I spent the entire budget on the VDI infrastructure.
So reuse what you've got anyway. It's green too.
So we've had to not replace any desktops unless something went totally kaput this year. So what we're doing is we're re-imaging desktops. For VDI, we re-image it as thin as we can, so there's basically nothing on it. We have a Windows 7 image. Yeah, and then they can just get the icon to connect into the
Windows
VDI.
7 that you're on. Yeah,
it's Windows 7, and for the VDI itself, it's mainly Windows 7. Though there's some applications where Windows 7's a bit of an issue, so we're actually having to look at some XP, but.
Yeah, you didn't think about Vista.
We just rolled out Vista totally. So I think most people out there will have done.
One question: when you go out and re-image people's desktops, are there any potential problems and pitfalls that people can avoid there by maybe taking some protection first?
Yeah, make sure they don't have any data on.
Do people know that they've got data that might go missing on there?
Well, it's important to make sure that they do.
Right, so you're taking local backups before you re-image?
No, we're telling people to move their data before we re-image.
Are they doing
It's
that?
their responsibility.
Yeah, we can put it solely on the users.
Yeah, and we're about. It's really.
I've tried that one as well. Does it work?
No.
But I mean, the serious point behind it is a lot of people, especially if they're not particularly computer literate, don't really know where their data is at all. They just know that they saved it.
Folder redirection.
Yeah. And to be honest, please.
So you were getting the folder redirection before you were doing the re-imaging?
Yeah. The folder redirection is crucial. It's basically fundamental to the VDI because we're not allowing any data on the actual VDI image. Yeah. So it's a VDI image. We're trying to keep it as thin as we can, or it's a number of VDI images. I don't think anybody will get by with one VDI image.
How many images do you have, and how did you manage to keep it as low as you have done? Because that image creep is something that again we've had some feedback from. Because again, everybody thinks they're different, and what you need to actually control and keep that going in the way of process, or again, management buy-in.
I think we're about 6 at the moment, but
it's 8.
Oh God, it's 8. You see, there we go. Image image created.
You look away from you look away from a minute.
Yeah.
He's got two extra images in. It's a serious problem, isn't it? Because each time you're putting a new image in, you're multiplying your support requirement.
And because we got the CSOs to look at what applications were out there, we tried to say, right, well, you don't actually need that application anymore. You know, you've had it since the year dot. What are you actually using it for? Why are you using that when you could be using whatever? You know, that's, you know, you could be using Microsoft Office for that. You could be using something that's, you know, So we're trying to keep the applications down to as few as possible, but you've still got to do different images.
I take it that you can't use any form of, you know, chargeback type modelling to try and persuade people to keep things simpler, but given the nature of the organisation in which you work.
Well,
blame allocation on the costing.
No. I mean, in fact, we don't even see, because one of the things about VDI is the power savings, obviously. We don't even get to see them because our estates department takes them.
So you are making power savings because of what you're doing, but you're not getting any of the credit.
We don't get any of the credit.
No, in fact, we're not. ICT are not making any power savings. Because ours increases with the amount of hardware we've got to put in.
So you're getting blame, in fact. So you're getting blame even though you're doing good.
I'm afraid so. One of the issues that we had recently were some power issues in our server rooms, and the fact that we've just put in a whole lot of more servers for VDI obviously hasn't helped that either. So there's been a lot of power work going on in our side. It was coincidental, I have to say. It wasn't us putting VDI in.
So you do the work, facilities get the benefit.
They get the benefit.
So the organisation as a whole does well out of it, but you know it doesn't look so good on IT unless you can actually explain to people, hey, look, a lot of that saving came from us.
Yes. And next year when we start putting, I mean, we've got a couple of thin clients, no more than a couple of thin clients because we've just been testing them. Next year when we start throwing out more thin clients, you know, the thin clients are looking at running about 30 watts, whereas standard PC is 300 watts. You know, so there's
over time you'll get the difference.
Oh yeah.
A couple of questions. How are you dealing with laptops, mobile workers?
Right. Okay. Because we're still rolling this out, we're still getting this bit sorted, shall we say? Yeah. Because we're actually implementing at this moment a new remote access system. Yeah. So because we need secure remote access, we have had to go and get Vodafone call it Vodafone Remote Secure Access VRC, I think it is they call it. Yeah. So we are moving the force over to a 3G solution for remote access.
Which is going to come into a Microsoft UAG.
Yeah. Right. Another Microsoft product. But again, it was a bit of a no-brainer because we got our enterprise agreement and Microsoft have thrown the UAG licenses into the enterprise CAL now. Right. So from our perspective, UAG was a good option.
Yeah, it's a lot of organisations looking seriously at that.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, something that we get a lot of feedback on is just licensing in general. Has virtualisation on either the server side or now on the desktop side as well caused you any problems with making sure that you're managing your licenses well? Because again, given the nature of your organisation, managing licence risk is presumably something that at least occupies some of your time because it's something that you don't get problems with.
We actually negotiated a new enterprise agreement almost a year ago now with Microsoft. Though we didn't actually get it, it was kind of signed up retrospectively, so it came into effect a year ago in April or whatever, even though we didn't actually get everything signed up until around about June, July. To actually take care of a lot of the license and stuff. For instance, we never took software assurance in our Office before. We used to buy Office and Select without software assurance because our strategy was never to update the desktops. Yeah. So if a desktop went in Windows 2000, Office 2000, it stayed at Windows 2000, Office 2000 until it got replaced by desktop replacement. So we never rolled out new operating systems or new versions of Office to all desktops. Yeah. That's obviously all changing now with VDI.
So given that you've now got these very thin desktops as well, presumably that makes your end of life of equipment easier to handle? There's less clearing up and cleaning to do before the equipment leaves the force?
to be honest, from our perspective, that it's all got to be because we are a police force. It's all got to be securely.
Absolutely.
But
is the process simpler given that there's less to clean?
It doesn't make any difference to us.
No.
Though, from a security's perspective, the security officer loves the fact that there is no data on the desktop. Yeah,
because we have a lot of remote sites in council buildings all over the place, and this solution offers a secure way for them to get.
Yeah, so they're switched off, there's nothing on them.
Yeah. And the other thing about these, because we're lucky as a force because we've got our own network. So because historically with our own radio department, with our own hill sites and with our own links, a few years back we put in our own microwave network.
So communications to actually, when someone tries to load an image, you don't have any bottlenecks on the communications.
No. So
have you had any scenarios where you do have to use, DSL or some other comms that might be more of a throttle on it?
Yeah, we do have some of these smaller sites have got ADSL links that were taken from TeleWest, and obviously there are some bottlenecks there.
Is that a big problem for you, or is it something you can manage?
It's something that's manageable. I think the Atlas...
They actually prefer the VDI solution to what it was previously, because previously they had to go to the main headquarters for all of the workload, whereas now it's the VDI machines there.
Yeah. So they push it out, it's there, it stays there all the time, rather than everything going up and down, up and down, up and down.
I think user experience is because in an RDP session out at one of these smaller sites now, it's much quicker. Because before, when they might have had a session out somewhere that they shared with a council, and they didn't like it because it was really slow, so they'd rather come into headquarters.
So VDI is giving you a performance boost rather than a performance inhibitor?
It's giving us a performance boost, but I think there's a tendency for the client support officers to actually go out, grab the PC, bring it back, re-image it, and at headquarters get it re-imaged, in a
that's sensible. Save you that big
take it back out again.
Yeah. But it's meaning that the staff can work where they're meant to work much more effectively, rather than travelling back and forth. So.
And that is one of the key priorities for the force.
Yeah.
Actually having the people where they need to be. So.
You're going to wish that you hadn't got involved with this, because we've got about a million questions. We've got 4 minutes to do them all, so we're not going to do that. If we've got some left over afterwards, I mean, they fall into general categories, then, maybe you guys can help Neil and Tony put together some answers, because there is a ton of stuff, far too much to get through. Do you think of application virtualisation? A few people are asking about.
Yeah, and we're using application virtualisation. So I was saying earlier, we're using every kind of aspect of virtualisation that makes so all 5. User session virtualisation, presentation virtualisation, because we're using RDS for internet access, which is quite cool, because then it's totally separate for the desktop. So anything that they pull down from the internet, they're not putting onto the desktop, the virtual desktop or whatever. We've obviously got a server virtualisation. We're actually doing some more in Hyper-V R2 with some of the stuff that we've put in for this. We've got the VDI itself, and we've got AppV. So yep.
So it's good. And also the people talking about the cost of licensing, because if you've got the desktop, you've got a license, you've got your virtual license, and you've also got your desktop license. Is that suddenly?
No, because with the enterprise agreement, the desktop license actually covers the license for the virtual.
I think they were trying to catch you out.
They were, but you've got to watch out for the VECD licensing, because you do need to have a VECD license from Microsoft. And I'm sure Neil won't mind me saying that when you put out a thin client, the VECD license is, and this will catch people out if they're not careful, because I have talked to a lot of people that don't realise this, when you go thin client, your VECD license is much more than your standard VECD license if you just got it on your desktop.
Okay, so one question. Someone's asking how you manage the profiles.
The profiles?
The user profiles.
So user profiles.
Yeah.
How we manage the user profiles.
We've got a lot of users.
We've got a lot of users. We've got it split down into different. So we've obviously got the 6 divisions, and then under the divisions we've split it down further into different departments. So we've used group policy for the Windows 7 for the Roman profiles. Yeah. because we didn't want to script in all the XP and give everybody roaming profiles with their old XP, but it was easy. Windows 7, we just put in a group policy, so when they move to Windows 7, they get roaming profile. The folder redirection, that goes into group policy. That's nice and easy. So using group policy, if you're going Windows 7, you can do your folder redirection and your roaming profile. Whereas if you're not going Windows 7, you can only do your folder redirection with group policy.
Great. Guys, we're going to have to call it quits there because our time is more or less up. There's tons of stuff to talk about. I mean, and I get the feeling you could talk about this.
We cover practically nothing,
I know this, but, until they invent the 12-hour webcast and the 12-hour day for the guys to watch the webcast, then we can't do that. But, it's been great to get an insight in this. I've got some good feedback from people saying this is really useful to find out how it's going.
There is a good white paper available as well.
A NetApp white paper. NetApp, storage vendor, it doesn't matter whether you're using NetApp or not. NetApp have got a brilliant white paper on Hyper-V. Yep.
Absolutely, really useful.
You really recommend that for people?
I would recommend reading NetApp's white paper. I don't know if they actually call it a white paper, but it's...
everyone's calling everything a white paper these days, aren't they? So they probably do. You agree with that, Neil? Do you?
Yes, it's a good one, so we'll get the link for that.
Okay. Guys, we're out of time. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Neil. And most of all, thank you for coming in. And because, I mean, literally this time we couldn't do it without you. And we couldn't do it without you guys either. So thank you very much for all your questions. I tried to get to as many of them as possible, but they don't half talk fast, these guys, don't they? It's hard to get a word in edgeways. So I'll just leave it and say thank you very much. We'll answer the rest of your questions as we can, as quickly as we can as well. Give us your feedback afterwards. I do have one warning because, obviously we're dealing with law and order today. The warning is if you see this man on no account approach him. He's very dangerous. He's been seen posing as an analyst and has managed to convince some gullible people. So just a little bit of law and order to finish off there, but sleep well. And we will see you again, hopefully, for our next RegCast. From all of us here in a packed studio today, thank you, goodbye.